The Price of Deception, A Silent Vengeance. This story will blow your mind. What would you do if the happiest day of your life became the stage for your worst nightmare? Imagine being accused of betrayal, stripped of everything you love, and cast out with nothing but the clothes on your back. Would you give up, or would you build an empire from nothing, to return with a vengeance so epic no one could ever forget it? Part 1. The Shadow of the Past, a game of power and redemption. The white carpet of rose petals scattered across the immaculate lawn seemed to tremble as the distant thrum of a helicopter's blades cut through the melody of the string quartet. 300 guests, dressed in their finest, turned from the flower-adorned altar towards the sound, shielding their eyes from the late afternoon sun. Victor Mendoza, heir to one of the country's largest pharmaceutical empires, stood frozen at the altar. The color drained from his face as he recognized the sleek black helicopter descending over his family's estate. "What is that? Who is that?" His fiancée, Sofia Beltran, clutched his arm. Her diamond bracelet dug into his skin, but Victor couldn't answer. The air had left his body as the helicopter door opened and a woman in an elegant white pantsuit emerged, her caramel hair dancing in the slowing rotor wash. Then, two small figures emerged behind her. Twins, a boy and a girl, no more than 6 years old, each holding one of her hands as they walked with confidence towards the wedding ceremony. Victor's mother gasped audibly. Anyone could see it. The children had Victor's eyes. Part 2. The Fall from Paradise. 6 years. 6 years earlier, Victor Mendoza and Eliza Navarro were the definition of a power couple. He was the brilliant heir to Mendoza Pharmaceuticals, and she, a biochemist whose research had already saved countless lives. Their wedding had been the social event of the season. Their vows were exchanged in the same garden where Victor now stood with another woman. Their marriage had seemed perfect, passionate, supportive, and built on mutual respect. They traveled the world together, donated millions to charity, and were preparing to start a family. However, behind the scenes, storms were brewing. Julian, Victor's childhood friend, had joined Mendoza Pharmaceuticals as the CFO, bringing his sister Sofia into their social circle. What no one knew was how these two siblings would systematically destroy everything Victor and Eliza had built. The Mendoza estate sparkled under the late afternoon lights as staff in impeccable uniforms circulated the annual charity gala. Victor watched his wife from across the crowded ballroom, admiring how Eliza commanded attention in her emerald dress as she discussed her latest research with the Minister of Health. 6 years of marriage had only deepened his attraction to her brilliant mind and kind heart. "She's an incredible woman," Julian said, appearing beside Victor with 2 whiskeys. "You're a lucky man." Victor accepted the drink with a smile. "I know. The clinical trials for her cancer treatment protocol are showing incredible results. The board is thrilled." Julian nodded, his eyes following Eliza as she laughed at something Sofia had said. "Must be nice to have both beauty and brains under one roof. We're trying for a baby, you know," Victor confided, the whiskey dulling his usual reserve. "Eliza's been tracking everything. Says the timing is perfect this month." Julian's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Fatherhood. That will change everything. Later that night, Eliza emerged from her ensuite bathroom to find Victor sitting on the edge of their bed, his phone in his hand. His face was unrecognizable, contorted with rage and betrayal. "Victor, what are you doing with my phone? Who is Miguel?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Eliza's brow furrowed in confusion. "Miguel? I don't know any Miguel." "Don't lie to me." He threw the phone at her, showing her text messages she had never seen. Intimate messages, explicit plans for dates. You've been seeing him for 3 months? In our bed, Eliza? While I was away on business. Victor, I have never seen these messages. I don't know any Miguel. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through conversations that appeared to be from her number, but contained words she had never written. His cologne was on your clothes. He knew things about our house that only someone who had been here would know. Victor stood up, running his hands through his dark hair. Julian found him. The private investigator confirmed everything. Julian? Eliza's mind raced. Victor, this is fake. Someone planted these messages. I would never... The bedroom door opened, and Julian walked in unannounced. Security found this in her car. He handed Victor a small bag containing a man's watch and a hotel keycard. I've never seen that, Eliza cried, trying to reach for Victor, who recoiled as if her touch burned him. Get out, Victor whispered, then louder. Get out of my house. Victor, please, I'm your wife. I love you. Tears streamed down her face as Julian motioned to the security guards waiting in the hall. Not anymore. I want the divorce papers drafted tonight, Julian. It's already arranged, Julian replied, not meeting Eliza's desperate gaze. The next few moments passed in a horrible blur as security escorted Eliza out of the bedroom. She pleaded with Victor to listen, to think logically. Why would I cheat on you when we were trying for a baby? But rational thought had abandoned him, replaced by a primal rage, fueled by what appeared to be irrefutable evidence. Within 30 minutes, Eliza found herself on the driveway of her home in a nightgown, watching as staff hastily stuffed packed bags into the trunk of her car. Victor watched her from the balcony, his face a stone mask, as Julian stood beside him, a hand on his shoulder in apparent solace. Your access cards have been deactivated, the head of security informed her coldly. Your accounts will be frozen by morning. Mr. Mendoza suggests you don't try to contact him or anyone at the company. Rain began to fall as Eliza got into her car, gasping through sobs. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Access to your email revoked. Then another. Your building access has been terminated. Then a third. A preliminary notice of divorce proceedings. 5 miles from the estate, she pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour pharmacy and sat there, shaking under the fluorescent lights. This couldn't be happening. There had to be some explanation. Someone had set her up. But who? And why? Her mind went immediately to Julian's strange behavior over the last few months, the way he seemed to appear whenever she and Victor were at odds, the subtle suggestions that Victor might be working too hard or traveling too often. Then a wave of nausea hit her, a familiar sensation from the last few mornings that she had attributed to stress. With trembling hands, she got out of the car, walked into the pharmacy, and bought a pregnancy test. 3 minutes later, staring at the positive result in the sterile pharmacy bathroom, Eliza Navarro's world completely collapsed. She was pregnant with Victor's child, homeless, and facing a brutal divorce orchestrated by someone she now suspected had been plotting this for months. Part 3. The Queen's Ascent. The next morning, she parked near Victor's office building, determined to make him listen, but security intercepted her before she reached the door. Mr. Mendoza does not wish to see you, Mrs. Mendoza, the guard said, uncomfortable but firm. Tell him I'm pregnant, she pleaded. Please, just tell him. The guard disappeared inside. 10 agonizing minutes later, he returned. Mr. Mendoza says that given your infidelity, he has no reason to believe the child is his. His lawyer will contact you for a paternity test after the birth. Eliza's legs gave out at the cruelty of it. Through the glass doors, she could see Julian, watching from the lobby, his expression unreadable. That afternoon, she discovered her credit cards had all been canceled. By nightfall, her closest friends had stopped returning her calls, all part of the same social circle as Victor. As night fell, she was sleeping in her car in a supermarket parking lot, 7 weeks pregnant and completely alone. She didn't know it yet, But the sonogram she would get 2 weeks later would reveal an even bigger surprise. Twins. Have you ever felt so cornered that the only way out is to build something entirely new from scratch? Imagine your world has crumbled. Would you give up, or would you rise to fight? Comment now what you would do in her place. The first ray of hope came in the form of Elena Garcia, an elderly woman who found Eliza throwing up next to her car one early morning. "You're either pregnant or you're dying, dear," Elena observed with surprising bluntness. "Either way, you need help." Elena, a widow who had lost her only daughter to cancer years before, offered Eliza her daughter's old room until she could get things sorted. It was in Elena's modest home that Eliza finally found the space to think clearly about what had happened and plan her response. She pawned her wedding ring for $12,000, a fraction of its value, but enough for prenatal care and a used laptop. She then began to meticulously document everything that had occurred, creating timelines and saving what evidence she could retrieve. The picture that emerged confirmed her suspicions. Julian, with Sophia's help, had orchestrated her downfall. But why? What did they stand to gain? The answer came from an unexpected source. While looking for job postings at a coffee shop, Eliza overheard 2 pharmaceutical researchers discussing irregularities in Mendoza Pharmaceuticals' recent drug trial reports. "The numbers don't add up," one whispered. The side effect profiles were clearly altered before submission. "Julian signed off on everything," the other replied. "Victor probably didn't even see the original data." Eliza's scientific mind went into high gear. She had been working on those very same trials before she was ousted. If Julian was falsifying data, that wasn't just fraud. It was dangerous. People could die, and if she had stayed, she might have discovered it. That night, cradling her growing belly, Eliza made a decision. Victor had failed her completely, choosing blind rage over trust. But she would not let Julian's plans harm innocent people or steal her children's future. "Their father didn't want us," she whispered to her unborn twins. "But that's okay. We're going to build something so spectacular that one day he'll realize exactly what he threw away." Morning sickness was a cruel name, Eliza discovered, as she threw up for the 3rd time that afternoon. At 4 months pregnant with twins, her body was changing rapidly, making it near impossible to conceal her condition during job interviews. "I'm sorry, Dr. Navarro," the lab director said, not meeting her eyes. "Your qualifications are impressive, but we've already filled the position." It was the same answer she had received at 5 other research facilities. Someone, almost certainly Julian, had blacklisted her across the industry. Elena found her crying on the porch swing that night. "Cheer up, dear," the old woman said, sitting beside Eliza. "The world doesn't end just because one man was too foolish to see your worth." "It's not just Victor," Eliza explained. "No one will hire me. My research experience means nothing when Julian tells them I'm unstable or dishonest." Elena considered this. "Then maybe you need to meet people who have never heard of Julian." The next day, Elena took Eliza to a small community clinic, which catered primarily to low-income patients. The waiting room was crowded, the staff overworked. "My friend, Dr. Rebecca Vidal, runs this place," Elena explained. "She doesn't care about pharmaceutical politics, only about helping people." Dr. Vidal was a human-shaped hurricane, a brilliant researcher who had left a prestigious position to serve those without access to proper medical care. After a 5-minute conversation about Eliza's research experience, she offered her a part-time job, analyzing patient data. "I can't pay you what you're worth, Dr. Navarro," Dr. Vidal cautioned, "and I see you're expecting twins." Eliza nodded. "I can tell by the way you move. Classic twin presentation, Dr. Vidal explained. Look, it's not a glamorous job, but it's honest, and nobody here will judge you for being pregnant and single if that's what you're worried about. For the first time in months, Eliza felt a glimmer of hope. When can I start? The job was, in fact, unglamorous. Organizing patient records, analyzing treatment outcomes, and helping to optimize the clinic's protocols. But it kept Eliza's mind sharp and provided her with enough income to supplement what she had gotten from her wedding ring. At 7 months pregnant, she tottered into Dr. Vidal's office with a discovery she couldn't ignore. There's a pattern in these cancer patients, Eliza explained, spreading charts on the desk. The ones taking Mendoza Pharmaceuticals' new medication are showing liver complications at triple the reported rate. Dr. Vidal studied this data. This is troubling. Are you sure? The sample size is small, but the pattern is unmistakable, Eliza confirmed. And it matches what I overheard about the trial data being falsified. Dr. Vidal's expression darkened. We should report this to the European Medicines Agency, the EMA. On what evidence? Eliza sighed. They'll say our data set is too limited. We need more proof. What we need, Dr. Vidal said thoughtfully, is to develop an alternative treatment. Something safer. Eliza blinked. That would take years and millions in funding. Not necessarily. Dr. Vidal smiled mysteriously. I happen to have a fully equipped lab at my house. It's where I do my own research after hours. Maybe it's time you saw it. Dr. Vidal's lab turned out to be a state-of-the-art facility, built in what had once been a large barn on her property. My late husband left me quite comfortable, Dr. Vidal explained. I use my inheritance to fund research that big companies won't touch, treatments for rare diseases, affordable alternatives to expensive drugs. Eliza ran her hand over the gleaming equipment. This is incredible. It's also private, Dr. Vidal emphasized. No corporate oversight. No shareholders demanding quarterly profits at the expense of safety. Just pure science. She looked at Eliza intently. Your former work on cancer treatment protocols was groundbreaking. What would you do if you had the freedom to continue that research your way? The question awakened something in Eliza that had been dormant since her ousting. The passionate researcher who had once believed she could change the world. 2 weeks later, Leo and Luna Mendoza arrived in the world, in Dr. Vidal's clinic. Healthy, perfect, and blissfully unaware of the chaos that surrounded their birth. No birth announcement ran in the newspapers. No proud father paced the lobby. Only Elena, wiping happy tears as she held the newborns, and Dr. Vidal, who had delivered them herself. They have your eyes, Elena observed softly. Yes, Eliza nodded, studying her son's serious expression and her daughter's curious gaze. But I hope they get my common sense. The recovery from childbirth was complicated by emotional exhaustion, but Eliza only allowed herself 2 weeks before returning to Dr. Vidal's lab, often with the twins sleeping nearby in a portable Moses basket. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, as Eliza perfected her research, focusing on developing a cancer treatment with significantly fewer side effects than Mendoza Pharmaceuticals' leading drug. When the twins were 8 months old, the breakthrough came. Eliza had created a compound that showed remarkable efficacy against aggressive cancers while maintaining a benign side effect profile. Dr. Vidal was euphoric. This is extraordinary, she declared, reviewing the lab results. You need to patent this immediately. Patents require money, Eliza reminded her, and lawyers. I have those, Dr. Vidal replied, but more importantly, this discovery deserves to get to patients. It needs a company to back it. Eliza laughed bitterly. What company would work with Victor Mendoza's discarded wife? Dr. Vidal looked at her long and measuredly. A new one, she said. One you start yourself. Part 4. The Phoenix Rises. The idea seemed preposterous at first. Eliza had no business experience, no industry contacts, and barely enough money to pay for the twins' diapers. But Dr. Vidal persisted, finally revealing that she had been discreetly investing in new biotechnology startups for years. "I'm prepared to provide seed funding," she told her. "My only conditions are that you maintain complete control and that the medications we develop remain affordable." "Why would you do this for me?" Eliza asked. Dr. Vidal smiled sadly. "Because 20 years ago, I was you," Dr. Vidal replied simply. "Brilliant, betrayed, and underestimated. The man who did it to me went on to become a pharmaceutical giant, selling drugs at 20 times their production cost. I've spent 2 decades looking for someone who could help me change that system." She smiled at the twins, who were playing on a blanket nearby. "Consider it my investment in the next generation." Phoenix Pharmaceuticals was born in Dr. Vidal's barn lab. Eliza used her maiden name, Eliza Navarro, to avoid immediate association with Mendoza Pharmaceuticals. Her first patent application went through smoothly. Julian and Victor remained completely oblivious that their former colleague was building a rival company. When the twins turned 2, Phoenix had already secured EMA approval for its first drug and had begun small-scale production. Dr. Vidal's contacts in the industry proved invaluable, opening doors that would have remained firmly shut for Eliza alone. Their first major contract came from the Mercy Hospital Network, which had been grappling with the high cost and troubling side effects of Mendoza Pharmaceuticals' cancer treatments. Phoenix offered an effective alternative at half the price, with significantly better outcomes for patients. The announcement made small waves in industry publications. Newcomer Phoenix Pharmaceuticals, led by scientist Eliza Navarro, secures multi-million-dollar contract with Mercy Hospital Network, challenging established players in the oncology drug market. At Mendoza Pharmaceuticals, the news received little attention. A new competitor was not unusual in their industry, and the company name raised no red flags. It was only when their largest hospital client announced they were switching suppliers that alarms began to go off. Julian stormed into Victor's office, throwing a report on his desk. "We just lost Metropolitan Hospital to a startup called Phoenix. That's $30 million in lost annual revenue." Victor, now more involved in the social aspects of the business than the scientific work that had once impassioned him, barely looked up. "Then offer them a better deal." "I did," Julian exclaimed. "They refused. They said Phoenix's drug has superior results and fewer side effects." Julian's tone was carefully calibrated to suggest incompetence, rather than his own sabotage of Mendoza's research after Eliza's departure. "That's impossible. Our R&D team has been working on that formulation for years. Well, apparently this person, Eliza Navarro, figured out in 2 years what our team couldn't in 5. Julian's tone was carefully calibrated to suggest incompetence, rather than his own sabotage of Mendoza's research after Eliza's departure. "Eliza Navarro." Victor frowned, the name stirring something in his memory. "Nobody knows much about her," Julian continued smoothly. "Kind of came out of nowhere about 3 years ago. Very private. Never gives interviews. But her science is apparently exceptional. I want to meet her," Victor decided. "Arrange a dinner. Maybe we should consider acquiring Phoenix rather than competing with her." Julian's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'll try, but my sources say she turns down most meeting requests, especially from larger pharmaceutical companies." "Everyone has their price," Victor replied with disdain, turning back to the social calendar on his desk, where Sophia had scheduled several charity galas they would attend together. Meanwhile, across town, Eliza sat in Phoenix's modest but growing headquarters, reviewing their latest financial projections, while the twins colored quietly in her office's small play area. Mendoza Pharmaceuticals lost another contract today, her assistant mentioned, placing new reports on her desk. Their stock is down 8%. Eliza allowed herself a small, grim smile. What a shame for them, and for us. This too, the assistant added, sliding over a business magazine. On the cover was Victor with Sophia on his arm at a charity event. The caption read, "Mendoza heir to marry Sophia Beltran in spring ceremony." Eliza's expression remained neutral as she studied the image of the man who had cast her from her home. The man whose children were now drawing quietly just a few feet away. Children he had never bothered to confirm were his, despite his initial request for a paternity test. "Mommy, look!" Luna held up a drawing of what appeared to be their small family. Eliza, Leo, Luna, Elena, and Dr. Vidal, all holding hands. "It's us." "That's beautiful, darling," Eliza replied, her voice steady despite the emotions bubbling underneath. Later that night, after tucking in the twins, Eliza sat on her balcony overlooking the city. In the distance, she could see Mendoza Pharmaceuticals Tower, lit up against the night sky. 3 years of strategic work had transformed Phoenix into a formidable competitor, one that was beginning to seriously dent Mendoza's bottom line. But that had never been her primary goal. Her phone buzzed with a message from her investigator, a former patient whose life had been saved by Phoenix's drug, and who now used his skills as a financial analyst to track Mendoza Pharmaceuticals' activities. "I found something significant in their quarterly reports, hidden inconsistencies that suggest at least $80 million unaccounted for. I need to investigate further." Wedding date also confirmed. May 15th. May 15th, the exact date. 6 years ago, when security had escorted her from her home. Eliza closed her eyes. The timing couldn't be a coincidence. Julian and Sophia had a flair for psychological cruelty. Choosing that specific date was clearly meant to completely erase her existence from Victor's life. But they had miscalculated gravely, for while they were planning a wedding, Eliza had been building an empire. And, more importantly, she had been gathering evidence of financial fraud, of deliberately concealed drug side effects, and of the elaborate plot to frame her for infidelity. The twins deserved to know their father, Dr. Vidal had told her repeatedly. And Victor deserves to know what Julian did. Eliza had resisted for years, protecting the peaceful world she had created for her children. But seeing the wedding announcement, planned for the anniversary of her greatest humiliation, something crystallized within her. It was time for the truth to be told. Final call to action. Do you think Victor deserves a second chance, or is Eliza's vengeance sweeter? Share your thoughts in the comments section. And if this story has you hooked, leave a like, and don't forget to turn on notifications for the next chapter in my series. Part 5. The Showdown. The Mendoza estate had never looked more magnificent. Thousands of white roses adorned the garden, where 300 guests had gathered to witness the union of Victor Mendoza and Sophia Beltran. String musicians played softly as guests took their seats, their whispered conversations creating a soft murmur of anticipation. Victor stood at the altar, handsome in his custom tuxedo, though close observers might have noticed the slight blankness in his eyes. In the front row, his parents exchanged worried glances. They had never quite warmed to Sophia, though they had kept their reservations private. Julian, serving as best man, watched the scene with thinly disguised satisfaction. Everything had gone according to plan. Within months of Eliza's departure, he had introduced his sister Sophia to Victor. Her calculated affection had been the perfect distraction from Victor's occasional questions about the evidence against Eliza. In the meantime, Julian had systematically siphoned off company funds, created offshore accounts, and positioned himself to eventually take over Mendoza Pharmaceuticals entirely. The wedding officiant took his position. The music changed to the wedding march. Sophia appeared at the end of the aisle in a designer gown that had cost more than most houses. And then, the distant thrum of a helicopter's blades. At first, guests assumed it was part of the celebration, perhaps an elaborate entrance or a surprise planned by the groom. But Victor's look of confusion quickly turned to alarm as the black helicopter descended toward the estate's helipad. "What is happening?" Sophia demanded, reaching the altar as guests began to turn toward the noise. Victor didn't respond. Something about the helicopter was hauntingly familiar. The ceremony ground to a halt as the helicopter landed. Security staff moved uncertainly toward the helipad, unsure whether to intervene, as no one had authorized them to stop the aircraft. Then, the door opened, and she stepped out. Even from a distance, Victor recognized her immediately. The world seemed to shrink to a single point as Eliza, his ex-wife, the woman he had cast aside 6 years ago, walked calmly towards the ceremony in a sleek navy pantsuit that emphasized how little she had changed. Her hair was different, her posture more confident, but her face stirred something deep in him that he had desperately tried to forget. Then, 2 small figures emerged from the helicopter behind her. A boy and a girl, holding hands, looking around with curious expressions that mirrored Victor's when faced with something new. "Oh my God," Victor's mother whispered, rising from her seat. "Ricardo, look at them!" Victor's father also stood, his face pale with shock. "They have his eyes, Victor's eyes." Murmurs spread through the crowd as Eliza and the children walked purposefully towards the ceremony. Security looked to Victor for instructions, but he remained frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. "What is this?" Sophia whispered, gripping Victor's arm. "Who is this woman? Why is she here with these children?" Julian stepped forward, his face a mask of rage and fear. "I'll handle this." He motioned to security, but Eliza's quiet voice cut through the chaos. "I wouldn't do that, Julian, unless you want your financial activities made public now rather than in tomorrow's papers." Julian hesitated as Eliza and the children reached the edge of the seating area. The twins, immaculately dressed and remarkably poised for their age, stood close to their mother, studying the scene with intelligent eyes. "Victor," Eliza said, her voice ringing across the now silent gathering. "I'd like you to meet your children, Leo and Luna, the ones you never knew you had when you threw me out 6 years ago." The collective gasp from the guests was audible. Victor's mother brought a hand to her mouth, tears filling her eyes, as she looked at her grandchildren for the first time. "That's impossible!" Sophia exclaimed. "She's lying, Victor. Tell everyone she's lying." But Victor couldn't speak. He was looking at the children, at the boy whose serious expression and thoughtful eyes were hauntingly familiar, at the girl whose determined posture mirrored his own in childhood photographs. "The DNA evidence confirming your paternity has already been filed with the family court," Eliza continued calmly, "along with evidence of how Julian and Sophia conspired to get me out of your life by fabricating infidelity evidence." Julian took a step forward. "Security, get this woman out of here. Immediately." "I wouldn't do that," another voice said, as Dr. Rebecca Vidal emerged from behind Eliza. "Unless Mendoza Pharmaceuticals wants the EMA to receive our full file on falsified retinol side effect profiles tonight, rather than next week." The crowd erupted in a confused murmur. Victor's parents pushed past security to get closer to the children. His mother knelt down despite her expensive dress, to look the twins in the eyes. "Hello," she said softly. "I would be your grandmother." Luna, always the bolder twin, studied the older woman carefully before replying. "You look like the pictures Mommy keeps in our memory box." This simple statement, revealing that Eliza had made sure the children knew their paternal family, despite everything, seemed to break something in Victor's mother. She began to cry openly, extending a hesitant hand that Luna accepted with surprising grace. Victor finally found his voice. "Eliza, how? When?" "I was 7 weeks pregnant when you threw me out," she replied, keeping her tone measured despite the emotion stirring beneath the surface. "I tried to tell you. Your security guards delivered the message. You said you wanted a paternity test after the birth, but no one ever contacted me." Victor turned to Julian, a look of crushing horror and confusion on his face. "What are you talking about? I never received any message about a pregnancy." Julian's expression hardened. "She's lying. This is obviously an elaborate plot to—" "To what, Julian?" Eliza interrupted him. "To disrupt the wedding you specifically scheduled for the anniversary of my ousting. To reveal that you and Sophia have siphoned over $80 million from Mendoza Pharmaceuticals? Or perhaps to inform Victor that I am the Eliza Navarro he has been trying to meet, the founder of Phoenix Pharmaceuticals, who has been consistently taking his market share for the last 3 years." The revelations came like physical blows. Victor staggered back, looking from Julian to Sophia, then back to Eliza and the children, his children, standing calmly in the middle of the chaos they had started. "This is absurd," Sophia declared, though her voice trembled slightly. "Victor, she's clearly unhinged. We need to get her out of here." "Actually," a new voice said from the back of the gathering, "I believe the person we're going to get out of here is Ms. Beltran." 2 individuals in dark suits stepped forward, flashing federal badges. "Criminal Investigation Unit. Financial Crimes. We have questions about certain financial transactions between Mendoza Pharmaceuticals and offshore accounts in your name, ma'am." As the federal agents escorted a protesting Julian and Sophia away from the ceremony, the wedding guests began to disperse into confused, scandalized groups. Some lingered in the distance, unwilling to miss the dramatic conclusion to what was supposed to be a simple social wedding. Victor approached Eliza and the children slowly, as if in a trance. He knelt before the twins, studying their faces with awe and devastation. "Hello," he said simply, his voice hoarse with emotion. Leo, always the more cautious twin, partially hid behind his mother's leg. But Luna looked directly at her father. "You look like your pictures too," she informed him matter-of-factly. "But the ones Mommy has are from when you were happier." Victor's eyes welled with tears. "I am so sorry. I didn't know about you. I would have—" His voice trailed off as the enormity of what he had lost washed over him. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private," Eliza suggested, looking at the remaining onlookers. "Your parents are welcome to join us." Victor nodded numbly. Then he turned to find his mother and father already standing nearby, unable to take their eyes off their grandchildren. "The helicopter is waiting," Eliza added, "unless you prefer to stay and explain to your guests why there won't be a wedding today." As they walked toward the helipad, Victor found himself walking next to Eliza, with the twins a little ahead of them, his fascinated parents in tow. "Why now?" he asked in a low voice. "After 6 years, why did you choose this moment?" Eliza's expression remained carefully neutral. "Because the twins deserve to know their father. Because your parents deserve to know their grandchildren. And because Julian and Sophia were about to complete their takeover of your company, leaving you penniless and potentially implicated in their crimes." She paused. "The timing of the wedding date, the anniversary of when you threw me out, just provided a certain poetic symmetry." In the helicopter, as they flew towards Eliza's home, Victor watched his children eagerly point out landmarks below. They were bright, articulate, and obviously well-raised. The life that Eliza had built without him suddenly seemed to materialize in his mind. The birthdays he had missed, the first steps, the first words, the bedtime stories, and the morning breakfasts. 6 years of memories he would never get back. "Where are we going?" Victor asked in a low voice. "My house," Eliza replied. "There are documents you need to see, evidence of what Julian and Sophia have been doing with your company." She hesitated. "And things the children want to show you." The helicopter landed on the rooftop helipad of a sleek building with a Phoenix Pharmaceuticals logo. As they descended into a luxurious apartment, Victor realized with growing awe the scale of Eliza's success. This was not just a company. It was an empire built from nothing in 6 years. Inside the spacious, warm penthouse, the twins immediately ran to a bookshelf that displayed their artwork and school accomplishments. "We want to show you our room," Luna announced, grabbing Victor's hand with the ease of a child who had never known rejection. Leo followed with more hesitation, carefully watching his father's reactions. As Victor was led through the home Eliza had created, every detail revealed another facet of the life that had continued without him. Family photographs of holidays and birthdays, evidence of the twins' distinct personalities in their carefully decorated room. Shelves filled with well-read storybooks. In the twins' room, a space divided to reflect their different interests. Luna's half filled with astronomy decorations and science projects. Leo's with intricate building sets and books. Victor noticed a small box on a shelf labeled "De." "Can I show it to him, Mommy?" Luna asked when Eliza appeared in the doorway. With Eliza's nod, Luna retrieved the box. She opened it to reveal newspaper clippings, photographs, and even the announcement of Victor and Eliza's wedding from years ago. "Mommy made this so we would know about you," Luna explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "She said you were very smart, and that's why we're smart too." Victor looked at Eliza in disbelief. Despite everything he had done, or not done, she had made sure his children knew him, at least to some degree. "I'll give you some time with them," Eliza said in a low voice. "When you're ready, we need to talk about Julian's activities. Your parents are in the living room, rebuilding trust." In the elegantly furnished living room, Victor's parents sat uncomfortably on a sofa, still reeling from the day's revelations. Victor's father, Ricardo Mendoza, a formidable businessman in his own right, looked completely lost as he accepted a cup of tea from Eliza. "How did we not know?" he asked, his voice rough with regret. "Our own grandchildren." "Julian was very thorough," Eliza replied without bitterness. "He intercepted communications, falsified documents, and made sure Victor only received the information he wanted him to have." "But why?" Victor's mother asked. "What did he have to gain?" Eliza opened a laptop on the coffee table. "Control of Mendoza Pharmaceuticals. He and Sophia have been systematically siphoning off funds, while at the same time setting Victor up to take the fall for covering up dangerous side effects of their drugs." She turned the screen to show them complex financial records. As soon as they were married, Sophia would have had access to Victor's personal accounts and properties. They planned to complete the asset transfer a few months after the wedding. Ricardo Mendoza studied the documents with growing horror. "These are board-level financial reports. How did you get them?" "I have sources within Mendoza Pharmaceuticals," Eliza acknowledged. "People who remained loyal to the company's original mission, rather than Julian's vision." Victor walked into the room, visibly moved by his time with the children. "They're incredible," he said simply, looking at Eliza with new eyes. "How did you do it? Raise them and build a company from nothing?" "I had help," Eliza replied. "Dr. Vidal, for one, and an old woman named Elena, who took me in when I was homeless and pregnant." "Homeless?" Victor's mother repeated, horrified. "Yes," Eliza confirmed, her tone clinical rather than accusatory. "When Victor ordered me removed from our home, my accounts were frozen, my credit cards canceled, and my reputation destroyed. I slept in my car for 2 weeks before Elena found me throwing up in a parking lot from morning sickness. The raw reality of what Eliza had endured hit Victor like a physical blow. "I never knew," he whispered. "Julian told me you had moved in with your lover." "There was no lover, Victor," Eliza said quietly. "There was just me, 7 weeks pregnant with your children, trying to survive." As Julian was sick with the need to destroy everything they had built together, Victor sank into a chair, his head in his hands. The evidence seemed so conclusive. The text messages, the watch, even the witnesses, all fabricated, Eliza confirmed. Julian hired someone to create fake text messages. The watch and hotel key were planted. The witnesses were paid off. She opened another file on her laptop. "This is the payment record from Julian's private account to the man who posed as my imaginary lover." And she continued, turning to yet another document. "This is the restraining order you supposedly filed, which prevented me from coming near you to talk about my pregnancy." Victor stared at the document in horror. "I never filed this. I would never." "Julian forged your signature," Eliza explained, "just as he did on countless company documents, authorizing the release of drugs despite troubling test results." As the full extent of Julian and Sophia's betrayal became clear, Victor seemed to physically age before their eyes. His parents looked equally devastated, particularly his mother, who kept glancing down the hall from where children's laughter could occasionally be heard. "Why didn't you expose them sooner?" Ricardo finally asked. "With such comprehensive proof, you could have cleared your name years ago." Eliza considered her answer carefully. "At first, my only concern was surviving. Then, protecting the twins became paramount. When Phoenix was established enough for me to consider a confrontation, I had to weigh the impact on the innocent employees and patients of Mendoza Pharmaceuticals." She looked at Victor directly. "Despite everything, I never wanted to destroy the company or harm those who depended on it." Victor looked at her with a new understanding. "So instead, you built a competing company with better products and ethical practices, gradually shifting patients to safer drugs, all while gathering evidence against Julian." "Yes," Eliza acknowledged. "Phoenix wasn't just built for revenge, Victor. It was built because I saw how Julian was corrupting the mission of your company, the mission we once shared, to help people." A gentle knock on this door interrupted their conversation. Dr. Vidal walked in, carrying a tablet. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but you should see this. The news of Julian and Sophia's arrest has gone public, and the Mendoza Pharmaceuticals Board of Directors has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning." Victor paled. "Will the company collapse?" "Not necessarily," Eliza replied. "I've prepared a proposal for their consideration." She retrieved a folder from her desk and handed it to Victor. "A merger between Phoenix and Mendoza. It would stabilize things if presented quickly. Your parents have copies. Perhaps they could go with you while I handle the twins' morning routine." The simple domestic reference, the morning routine she had handled alone for 6 years, hung between them, highlighting everything Victor had lost due to his hasty judgment and misplaced trust. "Thank you," he finally said, "for the proposal, for dinner, for everything." He hesitated. "Would it be appropriate for me to say goodnight to the twins?" Eliza nodded. "They're probably still awake. Luna rarely goes to sleep before she's extracted at least 3 bedtime stories." A hint of a smile crossed Victor's face. "She's persistent, like her mother." "Yes," Eliza nodded, leading him towards the children's room. "Though her negotiation tactics come entirely from your side of the family." Part 6. The Legacy of Truth. The Mendoza Pharmaceuticals boardroom buzzed with tension as the board members gathered for the emergency meeting. News of Julian and Sophia's arrest had spread rapidly through financial circles, and the company's stock trading had been suspended pending investigation. Victor sat at the head of the table, his father by his side. Both men looked exhausted, but resolute. The board members, many of them old family friends, looked shocked by the revelations about Julian's activities. "The situation is serious, but it is not unrecoverable," Victor began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "With your permission, I'd like to present a path forward proposed by—" For the next hour, Victor described the merger proposal Eliza had prepared. The board listened with growing interest as he explained how combining Phoenix's innovative research with Mendoza's established infrastructure could preserve jobs, maintain patient access to medicine, and position the combined entity as an industry leader. "This Eliza Navarro," a board member said with skepticism. "She's willing to merge her successful company with ours. During a crisis of this magnitude, what is her motivation?" Victor and his father exchanged glances. "There's something else you need to know," Victor admitted. "Eliza Navarro is Eliza Mendoza, my ex-wife." The gasps of astonishment around the table reflected the explosive nature of this revelation. "The woman Julian claimed was unfaithful?" a board member clarified. "The one who disappeared 6 years ago?" "Yes," Victor confirmed. "Julian fabricated evidence against her to conceal his own financial crimes. She was innocent of all charges and is now our leading competitor." "She is," Victor acknowledged. "She is also the mother of my 6-year-old twins, whom I met for the first time yesterday." The stunned silence that followed was finally broken by the board's oldest member, Margarita Chen. "That is not something one simply gets over." Victor considered her question seriously. "I have started therapy," he admitted. "Something I should have done years ago, after my brother's death. Julian exploited my grief and insecurities masterfully." He looked at the board. "I am not the same man who cast her out. I can't change what I did, but I can make sure I never make that kind of mistake again." The merger announcement dominated headlines in business publications. Phoenix and Mendoza Pharmaceuticals announce historic merger. CEO Eliza Navarro, former wife of Victor Mendoza, in surprising corporate and personal reconciliation. The personal aspect of the story, the wronged wife who returns triumphantly with hidden children and a superior company, captured the public's imagination. Interview requests poured in, all of which Eliza politely but firmly refused. "This is not a tabloid drama," she told her PR team. "It is a business merger, with personal elements that are not for public consumption." As the weeks went by, Victor's relationship with the twins gradually deepened. Leo began to lower his guard, especially after discovering his father's extensive library and shared interest in geology. Luna simply adopted Victor as if he had always been there, naturally incorporating him into her expansive view of the world. The twins' upcoming 7th birthday became a focal point. Victor, anxious to make the occasion memorable, consulted with Eliza repeatedly about appropriate gifts and arrangements. "Nothing extravagant," she cautioned. "They don't need to be showered with expensive gifts to make up for lost time." "I know," Victor assured her. "But I would like to contribute something meaningful to the space theme Luna asked for." The day before the birthday celebration, Victor showed up at Eliza's penthouse with Dr. Vidal, who had become an unexpected ally in helping him navigate his new relationship with his children. "We have a proposal," Dr. Vidal announced for the birthday party. Eliza raised an eyebrow. "I thought everything was set. Elena is making the cake, the decorations are ready, and the planetarium visit is scheduled for tomorrow morning." "This would be an addition," Victor explained. "With your approval, of course." He described his idea. A professional observatory had agreed to a private nighttime viewing session after the planetarium visit. The twins and their friends would have access to powerful telescopes on an unusually clear night when several planets would be visible. "That's actually perfect," Eliza acknowledged. "Luna will be euphoric. And for Leo," Victor continued with more hesitation, "I arranged for a geologist from the Museum of Natural History to bring several rare specimens for him to examine, including," he added with a small smile, "a fragment of the meteorite that created the Chicxulub crater. Eliza looked at him with a new appreciation. You've been paying attention to their interests. Of course, Victor replied simply. They're extraordinary children. Getting to know them has been the greatest privilege of my life. The birthday celebration went off perfectly. The twins, surrounded by school friends and both sides of their unconventional family, blossomed under the attention. Elena and Victor's mother had formed an unexpected alliance, coordinating decorations and food with military precision. Victor's father, initially awkward with children, had found his niche helping Leo organize his growing rock collection. At the observatory that night, after the other children had been picked up by their parents, the core family group remained. Luna moved from telescope to telescope with boundless enthusiasm, while Leo carefully logged his observations in a notebook Victor had given him. While the children were occupied with Dr. Vidal and the older Mendozas, Victor found himself standing next to Eliza at the observatory railing, looking out at the city lights. "Thank you," he said in a low voice, "for letting me be a part of today." Eliza nodded, her expression softening in the dim light. "You did well. The observatory was the perfect gift." "I meant what I said earlier," Victor continued carefully. "Getting to know them, even with all the years I missed, is the greatest gift I could have received." Eliza turned to him, studying him. The man she had once loved so completely, now a different person, molded by loss and revelation. "You've changed," she observed. "I had to," Victor replied simply. "The man I was 6 years ago lost everything that mattered because he couldn't see what was right in front of him." "Not everything," Eliza corrected, looking at the twins. "They are still yours, in the ways that matter most." "Thanks to you," Victor acknowledged, "because despite everything, you made sure they knew who I was." A comfortable silence settled between them, not the intimacy of their old relationship, but something new. A shared appreciation for the extraordinary children they had raised and the complex path that had brought them to this moment. "Mommy, Daddy!" Luna called out excitedly. The parental designations now came naturally to her. "Did you find the rings of Saturn? Come see." As they moved to join their children, Victor paused. "Eliza, I know we can never be what we were, and I've accepted that. But I want you to know I'm grateful for this second chance to be in their lives and in ours, even if it's just as co-parents and business partners." Eliza considered his words carefully. "Life rarely gives us what we expect, Victor. Sometimes it takes away what we thought we couldn't live without, only to replace it with something we never imagined was possible." As the twins called to them excitedly, she added, "Let's focus on giving them the stable, loving family they deserve, whatever shape it takes. The legacy of truth." Part 7. A new chapter. A year after the dramatic wedding interruption, the twins' 8th birthday arrived with considerably less drama, but a lot more joy. Phoenix Mendoza Pharmaceuticals had not only survived the merger, but had thrived. By combining Eliza's innovative research approaches with Mendoza's established infrastructure, the company had become an industry leader in ethical practices, transparent testing, and affordable drug pricing. The birthday celebration was held at Victor's new house, a comfortable but not ostentatious home with a large backyard, perfect for the dinosaur-themed party Leo had requested. His interest had shifted from rocks to paleontology in recent months. Eliza arrived early to help with preparations, bringing Elena and Dr. Vidal, who had become regular figures in the twins' extended family circle. Victor's parents were already there, Ricardo carefully assembling a realistic-looking volcano that would safely erupt during the party, while his wife arranged prehistoric-looking plants around the garden. "Everything looks incredible," Eliza commented, surveying the transformed backyard. "The kids are going to love it." "I hope so," Victor replied, coming out of the house with trays of fossil-shaped cookies. Leo was very specific about the scientific accuracy. "He gets that from both of us," Eliza observed with a smile. Their relationship had evolved over the last year into a comfortable co-parenting arrangement. The initial tension had gradually given way to mutual respect as they navigated both their corporate merger and their shared responsibility for the twins. The children had adapted to their new family structure with a remarkable resilience. They now spent 3 nights a week at Victor's house and the rest of the time at Eliza's penthouse. Far from being confused by the arrangement, they seemed to thrive, having both parents actively involved in their lives. As guests began to arrive, school friends, colleagues from both companies, and the unconventional extended family they had assembled, Eliza found herself watching Victor interact with the children. His transformation over the last year had been remarkable. The ambitious, sometimes arrogant pharmaceutical heir had been replaced by a thoughtful, patient father who prioritized his children above all else. "He's done well, hasn't he?" Dr. Vidal observed, joining Eliza at the edge of the garden. "Better than I expected, to be honest." "Yes," Eliza nodded. "The twins adore him. And you?" Dr. Vidal asked softly. "How do you feel about all this? It can't be easy watching him integrate so perfectly into the life you built without him." "Actually, it's been easier than I anticipated. Victor isn't trying to take over or change what already works. He's simply adding to the equation in ways that benefit the kids, and in ways that benefit you," Dr. Vidal pressed gently. "Having a co-parent after 6 years of doing it all alone must be a relief." "It is," Eliza acknowledged, "though sometimes I feel guilty about it. After all that happened, should I let him make my life easier?" Dr. Vidal smiled knowingly. "Forgiveness isn't just about him, Eliza. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of the past." Before Eliza could reply, another guest arrived. David Vidal, Dr. Vidal's son, with an elaborately wrapped gift. Over the last year, David had become a frequent visitor at family gatherings. As a pediatric surgeon who had initially treated Leo for a minor sports injury, he had formed a natural bond with both children. "Sorry I'm late," he apologized, greeting Eliza with a warm smile. "An emergency surgery ran long." "You're just in time," Eliza assured him. "The volcano eruption isn't scheduled for another 30 minutes." As David moved to greet the twins, who received him with obvious affection, Dr. Vidal gave Eliza a meaningful look. "He canceled a conference in Porto to be here today," she mentioned casually. "Said the twins' birthday was more important." Eliza felt a blush of warmth at this information. Her friendship with David had developed gradually, but neither of them had taken steps to define it as anything more. "He's good with them," Eliza observed neutrally, though her expression softened as she watched David help Leo adjust his paleontologist costume. The party went off perfectly, with the volcano eruption as the dramatic highlight. Leo and Luna, surrounded by school friends and their unconventional extended family, radiated happiness as they blew out the candles on their dinosaur cake. As the celebration began to wind down, Victor approached Eliza with 2 glasses of champagne. "A toast," he suggested, "to our extraordinary children." Eliza accepted the glass. "To Leo and Luna, may they always be this happy." They drank in silence, watching as the twins eagerly showed off the real fossil specimens Victor had gotten from the museum. "I wanted to tell you," Victor said after a moment. "The investigation into Julian and Sophia's activities has finally concluded. Their sentencing is next month." Eliza nodded. The legal proceedings had been extensive, uncovering even more widespread fraud than initially suspected. "Did they give any explanation for why they did it? Why they targeted you specifically?" Victor's expression hardened slightly. "Julian finally admitted he realized you were close to uncovering irregularities in the research data," Victor explained. "He knew your scientific rigor would eventually expose the corners he was cutting. Getting you out of the way was an act of self-preservation. And Sophia," Victor's expression hardened, "apparently always resented our relationship. She saw Julian's plot as an opportunity to get what she had wanted since college: wealth and status as a Mendoza. Eliza absorbed this information thoughtfully. It's strange to think how different everything could have been if you had only listened to me that night. I know, Victor acknowledged, with a clear regret in his voice. Not a day goes by that I don't think about it. If I could change one single moment in my life, it would be that one. And yet, Eliza mused, watching the joyful chaos of her children's birthday party. Would we want to change it? Phoenix wouldn't exist. Your parents wouldn't have Elena to terrify them with her brutally honest opinions. She smiled slightly. Dr. Vidal and I wouldn't have revolutionized cancer treatment protocols. A silver lining to my catastrophic mistake, Victor suggested with a self-deprecating smile. Perhaps, although the cost was tremendous. Their conversation was interrupted by David, who approached with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Leo insists that only a doctor can properly examine his new fossil collection for scientific accuracy. Apparently, my credentials as a surgeon qualify me for this honor. Victor chuckled. You'd better not keep him waiting. He takes his fossils very seriously. As David walked away, Victor looked between him and Eliza with knowing eyes. He's a good man, he observed neutrally. Yes, Eliza simply nodded. The twins are comfortable with him, Victor continued carefully. They mentioned he sometimes takes them on outings on Saturdays. He does, Eliza confirmed. He's been a good friend. Victor studied her expression. Just a friend? Eliza looked at him directly. We're taking things very slowly. The children are my priority, as they should be. Victor nodded. But Eliza, if he makes you happy, don't let the past, our past, get in the way. The simple sincerity of his statement moved Eliza unexpectedly. This was yet another testament to how much Victor had changed. The capacity to sincerely wish for her happiness, even with someone else. Later that night, after the last guests had gone home and the twins were sleeping in their rooms at Victor's house, the adults gathered in the backyard. Elena and the elder Mendozas were deep in a spirited debate about educational approaches, while Dr. Vidal shared stories from her early days of research. David sat next to Eliza, their hands brushing occasionally in a way that suggested a growing intimacy. Victor, noticing this, smiled to himself before turning his attention back to the conversation. As midnight approached, Elena announced it was time for them to leave, prompting a general stir. For the night, the twins would be staying with Victor until the next morning, according to their established routine. I'll walk you to the door, David offered, as Eliza gathered her belongings. At the front door, away from the others, he hesitated. I wanted to ask you something. Eliza looked at him expectantly. There's a medical conference in Vienna next month, he explained. 3 days. I was thinking, maybe you'd consider coming with me. We could extend it to a week. See the city. The invitation hung between them, not just an offer of a trip, but a step towards a clearer definition of their relationship. I'd have to check with Victor about the twins, Eliza began cautiously. I already did, David admitted with a sheepish smile. He assured me he could adjust his schedule to have them that week. Dr. Vidal also offered to help. Eliza raised an eyebrow. You've been planning this? I've been waiting, David corrected gently. I know how important the twins are to you. I wouldn't suggest anything that would complicate their lives. The thoughtfulness behind his attention, not just for her, but for the entire complex family she had built, moved Eliza deeply. Vienna sounds wonderful, she finally said, allowing herself to accept the possibility of a personal happiness that had nothing to do with vengeance or redemption. The next morning, Victor made breakfast while the twins energetically recounted their favorite parts of the party. Eliza arrived to pick them up, accompanied by David, who had offered to drive them to their weekend science club. As the adults supervised the cleanup, an unexpected moment of harmony settled in the kitchen. Victor and David discussed the twins' educational interests. Eliza organized the week's schedule. Everyone operated with the comfortable rhythm of people who had found a way to put the children's needs above all else. When the twins ran off to get their science projects, Victor took the opportunity to speak with Eliza privately. "I wanted to thank you," he said, in a low voice. "For what?" Eliza asked, genuinely confused. "For allowing me to be a part of their lives," Victor explained. "For not letting bitterness consume you when you had every right to." Eliza considered his words carefully. "You know what the real secret was? What finally undid you?" Victor waited. "It wasn't the twins," she continued. "It wasn't Phoenix Pharmaceuticals or the exposure of Julian's plans. It was showing you that redemption was possible, but that forgiveness had to be earned every single day. The man who threw me out that night would never have understood that. The man standing in front of me now does." Her words held no malice, only an acknowledgement of the truth. Victor nodded slowly, accepting both the evaluation and the implicit recognition that he had, in fact, changed. "Mommy, Daddy, we're ready!" Luna called from the hall, where she and Leo waited with their backpacks and science projects. As they moved to join the children, Victor asked softly, "Are you happy, Eliza? Truly?" She looked at David, who was helping Leo adjust his dinosaur diorama. Then back to the twins, healthy, bright, and surrounded by people who loved them. Finally, she considered herself. The woman who had gone from homelessness to building a pharmaceutical empire, who had raised extraordinary children alone, and who had now found a peaceful resolution to what once seemed an unforgivable betrayal. "Yes," she answered honestly, "not in the way I once imagined, but perhaps in a way that is better than I could have ever planned." Outside, as they prepared to part ways, the twins going with Eliza and David to science club, Victor heading to a company meeting, Leo suddenly stopped. "Wait," he said seriously. "We forgot something important." The adults exchanged worried glances. "What is it, sweetie?" Eliza asked. "Our family picture," Leo explained, pointing to the camera that was still on the entry table from the party. "We're supposed to take one after every birthday. It's our tradition." The simple request to document their unconventional family momentarily silenced the adults. It was Luna who solved the practical problem. "We need the timer," she declared, already setting up the camera. "Everyone by the garden wall, quick!" They assembled according to her instructions, Victor and Eliza with the twins between them, David and the others arranged around them. As the timer counted down, Leo and Luna smiled, with the simple joy of children surrounded by adults who had found a way to put love over resentment and forgiveness over vengeance. The camera clicked, capturing a moment that would have seemed impossible 2 years prior. Not a perfect family by conventional standards, but one that had been forged, through extraordinary circumstances, into something resilient and real. Later that night, as Eliza reviewed work documents, while the twins finished homework at her dining table, her phone buzzed with a message from Victor. He had sent the family photo, accompanied by a simple text. "It's not what either of us imagined, but perhaps it's better than we planned. Thank you for showing me that the most powerful revenge was not destruction, but creation." Eliza studied the image, the joyful faces of her children, surrounded by the unusual extended family they had assembled. Victor was right. The vengeance she had finally taken was not to destroy him or his company. It was to create something so extraordinary from the ashes of betrayal that it transformed everyone it touched, including herself.